I'll be right back. All right. Good morning, everybody at the Chatham Islands. This is Thomas Kurt, actually from the Netherlands, restaging Elaine Summers' Skytime, skytime.org, www.skytime.org. Welcome everybody who comes here. Welcome to everybody who's watching. The coming 36 hours will be dedicated to Elaine Summers and Skytime. The sky is ours altogether. Consider the wonders of it all. How do you feel about the sky today? First of all, the author of this is very likely is La Fuerza. If you like this mix, I love its music. This music has been with me for pretty much the last 2 weeks as I started preparing this event. So if you like what you hear, go to La Fuerza on YouTube and try to find more videos. There are plenty of more videos, as you can see here. Lots and lots and lots and lots and lots. As you can see here, the Chatham Islands have just started with sun going up. And there it's already Monday morning. But here, it depends on where you are. For me, it's 7:21 p.m. For people in New York City, it's likely 3:21 p.m. in the afternoon. So this is a live cam. This is something that was probably still very, very difficult to do back in 1995 when Elaine conceived of Skytime, the idea. What you see here is a Chatham Fish Pier on the Chatham Islands, one particular place. And this is something that if you just put in webcam and a place name, you have good chances of finding something. think this is a place in Australia. As I was working with Eva Kartzag, we talked about that she had grown up in Australia for a long time, just about most of her childhood, and how the open skies of Australia were a very special experience for her, and that she would watch the open skies many, many times. For people who are trying to get in, for some reason I can't seem to get to the controls. Maybe that's because I'm sharing. Maybe this is a good time to talk about what are time zones? How does the Earth rotate, and why, even though I thought this was going to be a 24-hour event, this is really a 36-hour event. It is true. It has everything to do with how the sun rotates, well, how the Earth actually rotates. Not the sun, but how the Earth rotates around the sun. So let me go to the next video. Turn down the music. Thanks again for the artist. So many people, and if you follow news about AI, the human cost of AI is something quite to behold. It is not an easy thing, and it is not to be understood by itself. There are plenty of people here who do have a say. Either way, I found this video about time zones. So let me play this video about the time zones, and that way we can all understand why now.
Today, we will talk about time zones and the coordinated universal time. So before looking at these concepts, we have to see how time is measured. On Earth, the passage of time is measured by the movement of the sun in the sky. Although in fact, it is the rotation of the Earth around its own axis that produces the effect that the sun moves in the sky. With this in mind, the Earth makes one complete revolution around its own axis in approximately 24 hours, and that period of time is what is considered a day. Now, the current time of day depends on our position on Earth. As we can see in this example, the sun always shines on one side of the Earth, while the other side remains in darkness. In this case, we can see the line that divides both sides, which is the sunrise. This way, in the north coast of Colombia for example it is 3 a.m., while at the same time, on the west coast of Africa it is 9 a.m., and on the east coast it is noon. Taking this into account, we can say that each position on Earth will have a specific solar time, depending on the relative position of the sun in the sky. Now, the solar time is the real time relative to the position of the sun and an observer at a point on the Earth's surface. One important thing to bear in mind is that points on the same meridian will have the same solar time. So in other words, we can say that solar time depends on longitude. So let's relate the degrees, minutes, and seconds of longitude to the passage of time in terms of hours and minutes. As we already mentioned, the Earth makes one complete revolution around its own axis in 24 hours. So we can say that it rotates 360 degrees in 24 hours. This means that it takes 1 hour for the Earth to rotate 15 degrees. And therefore it takes 4 minutes for the Earth to rotate 1 degree, and 4 seconds to rotate 1 minute of longitude. With this being said, to know if it is later or earlier at a point on the Earth with respect to our position, we must take into account that the Earth rotates from west to east. This way, in all places east of our position it will be later, while in places west of our position it will be earlier. We can see this more clearly in this example. Here we have the lines that represent noon, sunrise and sunset. So let's say that we are in this yellow point in Africa, and as we can see currently it is noon. From this perspective it is more obvious that in all places to the east of our position it will be later, while in all places to the west it will be earlier. Now, the question is, how early or how late is it at a certain point on the Earth with respect to our position? Well, it is possible to calculate how different the solar time is between 2 points by knowing their longitude. Let's see the following example. Here we have the coordinates for the cities of Miami and Berlin. So the question is, if the solar time in Miami is 4 a.m., what solar time will it be in Berlin? Well, first we have to determine the difference in longitude, which is the distance between the meridian that passes through Miami and the meridian that passes through Berlin, in terms of degrees, minutes, and seconds of arc. So as we can see, Miami is 80 degrees and 11 minutes west of the prime meridian, while Berlin is 13 degrees and 24 minutes to the east. Now, since the points are on different hemispheres, we must add the longitudes to obtain the difference in longitude, which in this case is 93 degrees and 35 minutes. Now that we have the difference in longitude, we must convert it to time. So as we previously mentioned, 1 degree of arc corresponds to 4 minutes of time, and 1 minute corresponds to 4 seconds of time. In this order of ideas, 93 degrees equals to 372 minutes of time, and 35 minutes is equal to 140 seconds of time. If we express it correctly, it would be 6 hours 12 minutes and 2 minutes 20 seconds. This way, the total difference in solar time between Miami and Berlin is 6 hours, 14 minutes, and 20 seconds. Now that we know the difference in solar time between these cities, it must be determined whether to add or subtract the time difference, depending on the relative positions of the cities.
This is Thomas Kurtwiak from
As
the
mentioned before, in all places to the
Elaine
east it
Summers.
will be later, and in all places to the west it will be earlier. This means that if the city is to the west we have to subtract the time difference, while if the city is to the east we have to add the time difference. In this case, since we have to determine the solar time in Berlin, which is to the east of Miami, we have to add the time difference, obtaining the current solar time in Berlin, which is 10 a.m. 14 minutes and 20 seconds. With this method, it is possible to determine the difference in solar time between any 2 points on the Earth, which implies that whenever there is a difference in longitude, however small, there will also be a difference in solar time. This includes cities within the same country, or even within the same province. Here for example we can see the coordinates of Quito and Guayaquil, which are 2 cities in Ecuador, which is a small country in South America. So let's determine the difference in solar time between these cities. Here, since both points are on the same hemisphere, we have to subtract the longitudes to obtain the difference in longitude, which is 1 degree and 32 minutes. Then we convert this into time, obtaining a difference in solar time of 6 minutes and 8 seconds. So this implies that if for example the solar time in Quito is 8 a.m., we must subtract the time difference, since Guayaquil is to the west, obtaining the current solar time of 7 a.m. 53 minutes and 52 seconds. As we can infer, having time differences between nearby cities is a big problem to establish schedules and coordinate operations, so in order to standardize the same time in a certain area, time zones were created. So, for reasons of convenience and standardization, it was decided that the Earth would be divided into 24 time zones, each 15 degrees wide, and as we know 15 degrees equals to 1 hour, so each time zone differs by 1 hour. This way, the total width of each time zone is 15 degrees, which means that it extends 7 degrees and 30 minutes to either side of its central meridian. Now, each time zone adopts the solar time of its central meridian. This way, all countries and territories within the same time zone will assume the same standard time, which means that they are no longer based on their actual solar time. Now, this standardized time for each time zone is known as local mean time, and is usually abbreviated as LMT or only LT. In this example, the local time for countries within this time zone will adopt the actual solar time of the 75 degrees west meridian. However, in some cases the countries are so large that they may have more than one time zone. A clear example of this is the contiguous United States, which have 4 time zones, and as we can see, the lines that divide each time zone are not always straight, since they adapt to territorial limits and borders. And this not only happens in the US, it actually happens worldwide, since governments have made arrangements to modify time zones to coincide with border or territorial boundaries as we can see here. Now, there are several ways of naming the different time zones. We can use the number of its central meridian, for example, 60 degrees west meridian time. We can also use letters from A to Z, excluding the J, for example, the Z time or Zulu time. And finally, we can use the position of the time zone relative to the prime meridian time zone, for example, UTC plus 5. Here we can see how the different time zones are named based on these methods. Let's now talk about the Coordinated Universal Time, which is abbreviated as UTC. This is the international time used as reference in air operations, and it corresponds to the local mean time of the prime meridian. Another names for this UTC time are GMT, which stands for Greenwich Mean Time, and Zulu time, which represents the time zone Z. However, in practice, they all refer to the same time, so they can be used indistinctively. Now, the use of the Coordinated Universal Time greatly facilitates coordination and commerce, especially on long flights where several time zones are crossed. And also by using UTC, everyone can be sure that they are referring to the same exact time, without having to make conversions and calculations, which results pretty useful for flight plans, NOTAMs, radio communications, and many other aviation applications. Now, an important time to keep in mind is the time of sunrise and sunset for a specific airport, since some air operations are limited to daytime. In this case, although the local time of the time zone is used as reference, the actual solar time at which sunrise and sunset occur at that specific position is taken into account. And it is also important to bear in mind that at the same airport, the sun will rise and set at different local times throughout the year. This is why the Civil Aviation Authority of each state shall publish official tables with sunrise and sunset times for each aerodrome throughout the year, as we can see here. These times will determine the boundary between what is considered daytime and nighttime operation. I hope the information presented in this video was useful. If so, don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below. Thanks for watching.
So this was obviously not decided directly for dancers. This was for people who are who are pilots, people who are flying, who need to know, is daylight or day or is it nighttime, wherever I am. All of this looks very, very modern and very contemporary, and we still have possibilities to work with this. However, it has been very different And people have been making it possible to navigate for a very, very long time. In fact, the next example I want to talk about are people from the area known as Austronesia. So that's all the way from Taiwan to Hawaii, Rapa Nui, and then all the way over to Madagascar. These are seafaring peoples who have been working with very simple ways that seem very simple, but actually are extremely complex and very, very sophisticated and have been worked out for hundreds, not even thousands of years. The next example I would like to present is a video about Austronesian seafarers. Let me prepare it for you in a moment. Let's double check what the temperature is. It's a quarter. We have 15 more minutes. Let me double check if anybody has been trying to come in. So far, not yet. But I hope that you can see this live streaming. This is Skytime, www.skytime.org. Conceptual artwork by Elaine Summers, choreographer, luminary intermedia artist, born 1925, died 2014. And it's her work that we're celebrating today as part of the Elaine Summers Centennial celebrations. As a matter of fact, let me change the course slightly, and instead of going to Austronesian navigation, let me go to Elaine herself and talk a bit about Skytime. So Elaine had been making works about the sky for quite a while. She had started, let me actually see if I can find this essay. I don't know why it's not possible for people to come in, but whatever it will be, will be. So let me share. Here you can see some of the earliest beginnings of Skytime, which was Sky Dance. This was 1982 in Iowa. And one of the great things about the internet is that Elaine took care that her work would be online. And so you can go to this web page and read it for yourself, all the many ways that Skytime was created. The person climbing on the satellite dish, by the way, is Suzanne Lamont. Suzanne, I don't know if and when you will see this live stream, but that's you, remember? When you were basically put on to dance right on the satellite dish and just do the very best you could. This being your very first performance ever with this kind of dancing. Let me show you actually a but you won't hear the sound. So let me stop the sharing for now. And try again. Not working just yet. Okay, let's try this again. Okay, it seems like we're having a technical difficulty, or no, we don't have a technical difficulty. It just takes a little longer. Here we go. Okay, this is taking way too long, and I want to move on to the next item, which is Marian Soto's Vimeo film. So let me stop the sharing right here. Hmm. Okay. Here we go. This is safer and much, much easier to do. All right, thanks for waiting. Apologies for the delay. Let's just try this again. All right, everyone. I realize I got caught by my own premonition because that's when there's nobody here yet. It's I'm 2 hours early, which is great. I love being 2 hours early because it's 7:21 Universal Time, but for me, it's not. It is 2 hours early. So there we go. This is a very good thing to know. Okay, that means that I will keep the live stream. I will turn off everything else and then come back here in 2 hours from now because that's when it will really start. So, because now it is still 1700 hours Universal Coordinated Time. Well, it's almost 1800 hours Universal Coordinated Time. So, in 1 hour from now, it will happen. There we go.